Welcome to MOOC course on Studies in Theatre. Dear students, today we are discussing African theatre. This is in continuation to my previous lecture in which we looked at the African continent as a land of cultures and a diversity of all kinds. A little bit of historical background was also shared in that lecture. Then we looked at the different kinds of theatre cultures that are present in Africa. These theatre cultures are varied and they embody the spirit of Africanism in very distinct styles because there are so many traditions because of different ethnicities that give birth to varied spectrum of performances. Carrying forward from the traditional and indigenous performance cultures, today we will look at the modern African theatre. Modern African theatre is something that figures in a lot of literature programs across the world where plays are taught as part of African literature in English. Because these plays have been written in English and they have also been translated in English. So, familiarity with modern African theatre is a little bit more, or I must say very well known, because of its presence in English literature classrooms. So modern African theatre refers to all those kinds of things, all those kinds of performance traditions or trends which are present, like in our country they are present all across the length and breadth because of varied changes that are taking place, and also because there are new things in theatre which the theatre enthusiasts, practitioners are using. So the origin of modern theatre in Africa can be traced back to various historical and cultural influences as well as colonial encounters. While traditional forms of performance, storytelling and ritual have long been part of African cultures, modern theatre as we understand it was largely introduced during the colonial period. So the first important thing that we must talk about this kind of culture is the African colonial influence on theatre, colonial influence on performances. Britain, France, Portugal, Belgium and other Western countries, they colonized different areas of Africa, and these traditions included plays, dramatic techniques and theatrical forms from Europe. European settlers and missionaries often staged performances for their own entertainment and for the purpose of disseminating their culture, using theatre as a soft colonial power, spreading religious belief and having mission purposes. So these things influenced the development of modern theatre in Africa. Educational institutions also have a role to play. Western style educational institutions which were established in the colonial rule like schools, colleges, universities, they introduced theatre courses, drama clubs and productions which provided opportunities for Africans to learn and engage with Western theatrical practices. Now, during the mid-20th century, as African nations gained independence, there was a growing movement to reclaim and revitalize indigenous cultures and artistic expressions. This period saw the emergence of African playwrights, directors and performers who blended traditional African elements with Western theatrical techniques to create new forms of African theatre, and people who are well known for this are Wole Soyinka from Nigeria, Atul Fugard from South Africa, Ngugi wa Thiong'o from Kenya. These are some notable examples, but there are others also who have played an important role in this process. So, African communities were resisting the cultural assimilation, and they maintained their cultural identities through various forms of cultural expression. And theatre also became a mode of assertion of identity. So, traditional performance practices continued to thrive in secret or in modified forms when the colonial period was there, and as a means of preserving cultural heritage, they were protected, and they also were the means to resist the colonial oppression. Because whenever there is a colonial rule, the cultural practices are also big victims. Languages, cultural practices are oppressed, they are suppressed, they are prohibited, and they are banned. So all these kinds of things happened in Africa also. We can understand this perspective from our own colonial experience. The same kinds of things happened there as well, and that led to the suppression of the cultural practices that included theatre. But as a mode of resistance, culture is asserted by the indigenous people, by the natives of Africa, like Indians asserted their culture, their cultural identities, and in that process, theatre practices, performance practices were also saved or performed secretly, and they tried to save them as well. So keeping, you must keep this in mind that whatever is happening around our planet, there are a lot of similarities as well. Let us not homogenize, but let us try to understand things with our own experiences. We can use our history, our experience, our understanding of our world as a matter, as a lens to see, or as a mode to see or empathize with what has happened in other parts of the world too. So moving on, we can see that how different things have evolved. As I said that in the mid 20th century, it was witnessed that the emergence of modern African theatre started to be visible. This came as a response to colonialism. This also came in the wake of a quest for independence which various ethnic tribes of Africa were seeking from their colonial masters. So, playwrights and practitioners of theatre began to explore themes of identity, freedom, nationhood through their works, using theatre as a platform for social and political commentary. Modern African theatre drew inspiration from both indigenous performance traditions and Western theatrical forms. They started blending both in order to create a unique and distinct expression in the language of theatre. And there were a lot of experiments as well in order to assert this kind of phenomenon. So prominent playwrights are, as I named already, Soyinka, Ngugi Thiong'o, and Atul Fugard, Femi Osofisan. She's also from Nigeria. He's also from Nigeria. Now, if you try to read a bit about more about these playwrights, then it will be good. But I can share few things about these playwrights with you. I can tell you that Wole Soyinka, who is one of the biggest writers of Africa, he is known for his plays, poems, and essays. He was born in 1934. He became the first African Nobel laureate. That was in 1986. His works often explore themes of political corruption, oppression, and the clash between tradition and modernity. His notable plays include Death and the King's Horseman, The Trials of Brother Jero, and a dance of the forests. Wole Soyinka's plays are an example of the kind of discussion that has preceded just now, whereby tradition and modernity both come together to create a very distinct style of Africanness, or to be specific, in Nigerian theatre. Ngugiwa Thiong'o is a Kenyan writer, and he's also very well known in academic circles because of his contributions to literature, language, as well as theatre. He has written prolifically in both English and Gikuyu. Gikuyu is his language, his native language. He is known for his commitment to decolonizing African literature and promoting indigenous languages. His notable works include I Will Marry When I Want, which he co-authored with Ngugi wa Miri, and it was performed in 1977 and led to his imprisonment by the Kenyan government. So Ngugi is looked at as an authority on language issues, literature, and Kenyan cultural heritage. So he asserts his Kenyan identity in addition to his Africanness, his African identity, and he has written a lot about decolonizing the academic spaces, colonizing literature, decolonizing the process of writing, and he is a very vocal advocate of using native languages for most of the things in our formal life, in our intellectual training and education. Athol Fugard belonged to South Africa, and he is also a director, and his work often addresses the apartheid system and its impact on South African society. Fugard gained international acclaim for plays such as Master Harold and the Boys, The Island, and Sizwe Banzi is Dead, which was co-authored with John Caney and Winston Shona. His plays are known for their powerful and exploration of race, identity, and social justice. Then another playwright, Femi Osofisan, who belongs to Nigeria, is a poet as well, essayist, and he is known for his critical engagement with Nigerian and African socio-political issues. His works often incorporate elements of Yoruba folklore. Yoruba is one of the biggest tribes of Nigeria, and he has written numerous plays, including Women of Owu, Isu and the Vagabond Minstrels, and Who's Afraid of Solaren. So these playwrights have not only enriched the landscape of African theatre, the Nigerian theatre, South African theatre, Kenyan theatre, with their creative works, but they have also used their platforms to advocate for social change and cultural revival. And in addition to this, when we look at the themes and subjects that the modern African theatre addresses, they often are connected to the issues of colonialism, independence struggles, and post-colonial nation building. Playwrights addressed issues like these. For example, the struggles of African communities and ethnicities to resist the colonial oppression and to reclaim their cultural heritage, assert their rights to self-determination. Brutalities that the colonizers perpetuated on the people of Africa have remained untold for a long time. But theatre became an important tool to tell these stories of pain and atrocities, where the dehumanizing effects of colonial ideologies was visible. The Lion and the Jewel by Wole Soyinka, for example, is set in a Nigerian village. This play explores the clash between tradition and modernity and the impact of colonialism on African societies. Some of the pictures are visible to you for a reference, to have a general idea. Then, in addition to this, the aspect of cultural identity is responded to by the African playwrights, African theatre lovers, through the recurring theme of cultural identity. They are reflecting the desire of people of their countries, their land, uh, that they want to reclaim, and they celebrate their own culture, and they don't want to they don't want to be known as the people who are ruled by Europe and as the backyard of European uh, rulers, but they want to be seen, they want to be heard, and they want to be respected as people of distinct ideologies, cultural practices, and performance traditions. So, for that, you can understand the African identities need to be explored. The complexities of African identities have to be explored, then which they do by highlighting the diversity, the difference between various cultural tribes, ethnic tribes that exist in African continent, trying to defy the fact that Africa is not a homogeneous land. It is a land full of so many cultures. So the richness of this land, this continent, has to be conveyed through the productions and theatre practices. Plays like Master Harold and the Boys by Athol Fugard, which is set in an apartheid era of South Africa, delves into issues of racial segregation and cultural identity through the relationship between a white South African boy and his black servants. So, when you look at cultural identity as as a motif in various playwrights' work in African continent, you find that it is such a vast topic that it needs to be studied thoroughly and closely by understanding the background of the particular tribal culture of which these plays are telling the story, and also to understand how distinct the different texts are because they belong to different people. Political activism and social justice is also an important theme that has been recorded and documented, expressed in various plays of African region. Because these plays seek to critique the failures of post-colonial governments, which has been rampant in many post-colonial countries where the governments that came in the name of native governments, the governments, our own governments, they have let their people down. They have not been able to live up to the expectations of the people who first of all went through a long journey of struggles to get themselves free and now had to face their own governments, corruption and other issues. So seeking a meaningful change becomes an agenda for the political activism which is represented in plays as well. They are seeking to question the authority, challenging injustice, and working towards more equitable society to attain freedom from the new kind of struggle that they had to put up against these post-colonial governments. And plays like Sarafina by Bongani Ngema, set during the apartheid era in South Africa, is an example for this kind of theatre, this kind of theme. This is a musical drama which follows a young girl's journey of political awakening and activism against the oppressive regime. Then other themes include the legacy of imperialism that is present, because the imperialism, when it goes off, when colonialism is over, when that period is over, the lands that are remained behind, that are left behind, so-called independent, have lot to address to. They have dominant narratives of colonialism, and plays therefore seek to highlight the ongoing struggles for decolonization. Uh, the problem is, once colonialism is over, it is considered that the project of freedom is over, Whereas the second phase of post-colonialism is an active and assertive process of decolonization, which is probably not fructified in most of the post-colonial nations, and need to address this is visible in the theatre works to address the reparations, the historical justice and decolonization. Then how colonial ideologies, institutions and inequalities continue to shape the power dynamics and social relations of these newly freed countries, newly developed or newly made nations is also visible in the plays. For example, Ama Ata Aidu's work, Anova, this Ghanaian play explores themes of exploitation, greed and resistance in the context of transatlantic slave trade and colonialism. So transatlantic slave trade is a very significant paradigm to understand the Africanness, the identity consciousness, the cultural struggles and various other issues related to the countries of Africa, the lands of Africa. Now, if you look at, there are these three scenes are there which you can see, and they show you how African costumes, the tribal cultures, various dresses, costumes, colors, stage designing, properties are being used as a representation of ethnic identity, as a representation of cultural identity, as a representation of nativity, uh, in consonance or let us say in collaboration with the Western proscenium style of theatre, where lighting and arrangement and setup is the newly devised pattern. Moving on to the discussion of style and form of these plays, what we see is that modern African theatre typically adopted conventional Western theatrical forms such as naturalism and realism, while also incorporating elements of indigenous performance traditions. So there is a blend of traditional and Western elements. This fusion can include elements such as storytelling, music, dance, ritual and symbolism alongside realism, naturalism and other Western dramatic conventions. And many African playwrights, African playwrights use theatre as a platform for political and social commentary. So what they do is that they write against apartheid, dictatorship, corruption, gender inequality, social economic disparities, and seeking to look at theatre as a means to change, to bring in social change and to take forward their activism. So you also find experimental and innovative approaches in African playwrights' works, where non-linear narratives, meta-theatrical techniques, multimedia integration and unconventional staging are visible. Then multilingualism is one more factor of the style and form of African theatre, where playwrights are using languages in their work, including indigenous African languages such along with English, French and Portuguese, Creole languages. So multilingualism represents the richness and authenticity to the theatre world, and it allows the expression of diverse cultural identities. Then community of and collective creation is the hallmark of many theatre productions of in modern African theatre practice. The playwrights and theatre practitioners work closely with the local communities, drawing inspirations from their stories and concerns, and collective creation processes also involve improvisation, participatory workshops, and ensemble-based performances. Then another style aspect is the intertextuality and cultural referencing. So African theatre frequently incorporates intertextuality. Playwrights may rework classical myths, folk tales, oral narratives to explore contemporary themes and issues. Cultural symbols, motifs and rituals are woven into the fabric of performance, trying to create a connect with tradition while addressing the modern theatre practice. Then modern African theatre has also represented and tried to reach out to the global influences and address transnationalism. Playwrights are engaging with the international theatrical movements, experimental forms, and thematic concerns related to that. Cross-cultural collaborations, touring productions and participation in international theatre festivals. This also contributes to the global visibility and impact of African theatre. So in all, what you can see from this discussion, that the African theatre is characterized by diversity, creativity and relevance to the socio-cultural realities of the continent, and it is also continuing to evolve, adapt and reflect the dynamic nature of African societies and the ongoing quest for artistic expression and social justice. So these are the pictures that I have used in my discussion today. I hope you have liked this discussion. I suggest that you must read at least one play from different countries that I have named, like Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa, and many other countries where it is possible for you to get hold of English translations of plays or the plays written in English, because a lot of African literature has been written in European languages, and for us it is good that we can read that in English as well. So try to get hold of these kinds of topics. The plays are full of a lot of expressions of native cultures, dance, music, language, expressions, costumes, myths, mythologies. All in all, the modern African theatre represents an effort to take forward the love for performance in Africa, love for performance in various ethnic tribes of Africa, uh, and um, and transforming this love into a quest for activism, a tool to assert one's identity, and a method to document the experiences that they have had in post-colonial and colonial periods. But at the same time, these plays have also become the site of collaboration with modern theatre techniques and reviving and reclaiming the traditional theatre of Africa and the theatre practices, performance cultures of African nations. I must add one line in this lecture, that when I use the word Africa, I am using it for the sake of convenience, but my intention is not to homogenize the different countries of Africa. For example, if you say Asian countries or Asian theatre, then it becomes a very homogenizing expression for the different kinds of theatre cultures that are present in Asia. So this is a disclaimer that I do not intend to do that. I have tried to, look at different countries and different ethnicities as representation of their own systems, and within them also there are so many diverse issues that need to be attained and addressed. But this is some kind of an assignment that you students should take forward and try to look at different countries, different writers, different cultures in their own spaces. I will carry forward with some more discussion about African drama, African theatre, where I am going to discuss with you contemporary African theatre, because this has been modern. And I see you in the different lecture. Thank you. That's it in this lecture.